Emily Parker had always loved quiet evenings. There was a certain peace in the soft hum of the city outside her small apartment. The gentle rustle of leaves along the sidewalk, and the golden glow of her reading lamp. Yet tonight, despite the comfort around her, she felt an ache she couldn't shake, a subtle, persistent loneliness that settled over her like a soft, unwelcome blanket. She poured herself a cup of tea and stared out the window, watching the rain trickle down the glass. Each droplet caught the streetlights, scattering tiny points of light like distant stars. Emily had always been a dreamer, and these small, quiet moments had once sparked ideas, hopes, and ambitions. But lately the nights had grown heavier, filled with thoughts of things she wanted but hadn't yet found: connection, understanding, and someone who truly saw her. Her phone buzzed on the table, pulling her out of her reverie. It was a message from an old friend, Rachel. "Hey, Emily, it's been forever. Want to come over for dinner this Friday?" Emily smiled softly, her chest warming with a flicker of excitement. Rachel had been her closest friend in college, a kindred spirit with a laugh that could light up any room. Life had pulled them apart. Emily had moved to the city, caught in the rush of work and responsibilities, while Rachel had settled into a quieter life, raising her young son. Liam, the thought of seeing Rachel again filled Emily with both anticipation and nervousness. She hadn't been to Rachel's home in years, and yet the idea of stepping back into that familiar warmth sparked a memory she hadn't realized she missed so dearly. She typed back a quick confirmation, her fingers trembling slightly with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Friday arrived, and Emily found herself walking up the familiar path to Rachel's house. The evening air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain and earth. She paused at the door, smoothing her hair and taking a deep breath. Inside, laughter and the clinking of dishes drifted through the slightly open door, and her heart lifted. It was comforting in a way she hadn't felt in months. Rachel opened the door almost immediately, her face breaking into a wide, genuine smile. "Emily, you made it," she exclaimed, pulling her into a warm hug. Emily felt an unexpected surge of happiness. It had been years since they had embraced like this, and the familiarity of Rachel's presence made the distance of time fade instantly as Emily stepped inside. She noticed Liam for the first time. He had grown taller than she remembered, his brown hair slightly tousled, eyes curious and bright. He watched her from the corner of the room, a small, cautious smile tugging at his lips. Emily's heart skipped a beat. There was something quietly captivating about the way he observed the world, a thoughtful intelligence behind those eyes that made her momentarily pause. Dinner was simple but warmer. Homemade chicken pot pie, a fresh salad, and soft bread that filled the kitchen with an irresistible aroma. As they ate, the conversation flowed easily at first, full of updates, laughter, and shared memories. Emily felt herself relax, letting the comfort of old friendship wash over her. And yet there was something beneath it all, a subtle tension she couldn't quite name. It was in Liam's lingering gaze, in the way he sometimes leaned forward, listening intently, as if every word held deep meaning. After dessert, as Rachel went to fetch coffee, Liam's voice broke the quiet. "Emily, can I ask you something?" he said softly. There was a seriousness in his tone that made Emily look up immediately. He seemed older somehow, his curiosity mixed with an earnestness that caught her off guard. "Of course." "Liam," Emily replied gently, her curiosity piqued. There was something in his voice that suggested this wasn't a trivial question. "I've always wondered what it would be like if you were part of our family," he said quietly, almost as if he were confessing a secret. Emily froze. Her spoon hovered midair, her heart skipping a beat. The words were unexpected, innocent yet profound, and they carried a weight that made her pause. Rachel returned just then, carrying a tray with coffee, and laughed nervously. "Liam, don't say things like that. It's late, and you know you're teasing," she said, brushing it off. But Emily couldn't shake the moment. She watched Liam retreat slightly into his chair, and she felt a mixture of emotions, surprise, curiosity, and an unexpected warmth that tugged at her heart. It wasn't about romance, she reminded herself. He was Rachel's son, but the moment lingered in her mind, planting a seed of introspection she hadn't anticipated. After dinner, as she stepped out into the night to drive home, Emily felt the quiet stirrings of change. The evening had been ordinary on the surface, but beneath it, it had opened a door, a reminder of longing, connection, and the unexpected ways life could touch her heart. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope, a sense that something significant might be waiting just around the corner. And she couldn't stop thinking about that one sentence, quietly spoken, that had unsettled and moved her in equal measure. It was a moment she knew she wouldn't forget, a gentle shock that left her heart both uneasy and alive. The morning after dinner, Emily couldn't shake the memory of Liam's words. They replayed in her mind, quiet and insistent, like a soft echo bouncing through a long empty room. She knew the weight of her own feelings wasn't romantic. They were something subtler, deeper, a mixture of nostalgia, longing, and a yearning for connection that had been missing from her life for years. As she sipped her coffee, her thoughts drifted back to college days with Rachel. They had been inseparable, the kind of friends who finished each other's sentences, laughed until their sides ached, and shared secrets too fragile to tell anyone else. Emily remembered long nights sitting on the campus green, sharing dreams about the future, dreams of love, adventure, and the kind of life that made the heart feel full. Rachel had always been the heart of their little duo. She had a way of making people feel seen, of noticing the small details others overlooked. Emily had admired that quality endlessly, sometimes with a quiet envy she didn't dare name aloud. She remembered a rainy afternoon in particular, the kind where the sky refused to clear and they had huddled in the campus library. Rachel had shared a worry about her family, her voice trembling ever so slightly. And Emily had reached out to hold her hand, the comfort unspoken but deeply felt. It had been one of those moments that stitched their souls together, silent promise that they would always be there for each other. No matter where life took them, after college, life had changed course. Emily moved to the city for a demanding job, chasing ambition and security. Rachel stayed behind, marrying young and raising Liam. Time had stretched between them like a river, slow and unrelenting, and letters and calls had gradually become rare. But now, standing in Rachel's kitchen that night, Emily felt the familiar warmth return, as though no years had passed at all. And then there was Liam. Emily had known him as a small, playful child, once curious, energetic, always following his mother around like a little shadow. She remembered his first steps, the way he would grin when she made a funny face, and the tiny hand he had once held out to hers, trusting and fearless. Seeing him now on the cusp of adulthood stirred something complex in her chest. There was admiration for his maturity, a maternal warmth, and a quiet fascination for the young man he was becoming. Emily's mind wandered back to that night of dinner, to the moment Liam had spoken the words that lingered in her memory. She realized that the surprise she had felt wasn't about him personally, but about the unexpected depth of feeling that connection could bring an echo of the closeness she had once shared with Rachel, and a reminder of how much she had missed being part of someone else's life. She remembered a summer afternoon during college when Rachel had brought Emily to her small family cabin by the lake. The air had been heavy with the scent of pine, and the sun had glimmered on the water like scattered gold. They had walked along the shore, talking about love and life, about fears they hadn't voiced elsewhere. Emily had confided her doubts about the future, the loneliness she sometimes felt despite being surrounded by friends. Rachel had listened quietly, nodding with understanding, and in that moment, Emily had felt truly seen. It was a feeling she had chased ever since small. Intimate connections that made the world feel less lonely. Emily sighed, thinking about how life had kept them apart. Distance, responsibilities, and choices had created invisible walls that neither had intended. And yet, here they were, reconnecting through shared laughter, long conversations, and now an unexpected depth brought to her awareness by Liam's presence. It reminded her that bonds, even if stretched by time and circumstance, could never fully break. She thought of Liam again and the gentle sincerity in his eyes. It struck her that the world often moved too fast, that people rarely took the time to notice each other's hearts, to acknowledge the quiet emotions that lived beneath the surface. Yet here, in this house filled with the warmth of old memories and the fresh scent of possibility, she felt a rare clarity. That connection wasn't measured by time or proximity, but by the depth of feeling, shared in the moments that mattered most. Emily decided she wanted to see more of that. Not for romance, not for drama, but for the simple joy of being present in someone's life again. Of feeling that sense of belonging and care that had been absent for too long. She wanted to know Liam better, not as a child-ass. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when Emily found herself walking through the small park near her apartment. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of fallen leaves and the distant aroma of fresh bread from the bakery around the corner. She liked this park, the familiar benches, the soft hum of the city beyond, and the way the sun painted everything golden in the late afternoon. It was peaceful, yet today Emily felt a restless anticipation she couldn't quite explain. She hadn't seen Rachel or Liam since that dinner, yet their words and laughter lingered in her mind like a gentle echo she couldn't shake. Life, she realized, had a way of pulling the past and present together at the most unexpected moments. And she was about to be reminded of that truth in the most surprising way as she walked along the winding path. She noticed a figure sitting alone on a bench near the fountain. He was sketching something in a notebook, his posture relaxed but focused. Emily's chest tightened slightly. The figure was unmistakable. Liam. He looked up just as she approached, eyes widening in recognition. Emily, he called softly, closing his notebook. There was a hint of excitement in his voice, tempered by the natural caution of someone unsure of their welcome. "Hi, Liam," Emily replied, smiling warmly. She felt a rush of emotion, a mixture of surprise, nostalgia, and a quiet thrill. The coincidence of seeing him here, in this ordinary park, felt almost like fate. It was as if life had orchestrated this moment, giving her a chance to reconnect outside the familiar walls of Rachel's home. They sat together on the bench, the fountain murmuring softly beside them. Liam seemed thoughtful, and for a moment neither spoke, letting the sounds of the park fill the silence. Then, in a voice gentle but earnest, he said, "I didn't expect to see you here. It's nice." Emily nodded, feeling a wave of emotion she hadn't anticipated. "It's nice to see you too." "I wasn't expecting to run into you either," she replied. She could sense the same unspoken curiosity that had been present at dinner, the quiet tension that hovered between familiarity and discovery. For a while, they talked about ordinary things, school, books, music. But beneath the surface, there was something more, the kind of connection that doesn't need to be labeled. The subtle recognition of kindred spirits meeting again after time apart. Emily found herself noticing small details she hadn't before. The intensity in Liam's eyes when he spoke about his favorite subjects. The thoughtful pauses when he considered a question. The easy way he smiled when he felt truly understood. Then came a small moment, almost trivial, yet charged with significance. A little dog ran past, barking happily, and Liam laughed, his hand brushing hers as he reached to shoo it away. The touch was fleeting, but Emily felt it a spark of awareness. The gentle reminder that emotions could be stirred by the smallest of coincidences. She remembered the dinners, the walks, and the quiet conversations with Rachel that had shaped her understanding of connection. Now, in this park, the present seemed to breathe life into those memories. There was no rush, no pressure, just the raw, honest feeling of human hearts brushing against one another through shared presence. Liam looked at her seriously for a moment, then said, "I've been thinking about that night at dinner. The things I said." His voice was hesitant, almost vulnerable. Emily's heart tightened slightly. The memory of his words, their unexpected weight, was still vivid in her mind. "It's all right," Emily said softly. "I remember and I understand. It was thoughtful. You have a good heart." Liam, she saw relief flash in his eyes, and for a moment, the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them sitting quietly on a park bench. Connected by unspoken understanding, they walked slowly together as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the path. The conversation turned to hopes for the future, small fears and dreams they hadn't voiced elsewhere. Emily realized that the twist of fate, the coincidence of this meeting, wasn't just about seeing Liam, it was about rediscovering the emotional depth she had almost forgotten, the joy of meaningful connection, the power of attention, and the beauty of hearts meeting without expectation or judgment. By the time they parted, Emily felt a strange mixture of contentment and anticipation. Something had shifted, a quiet but profound awakening. She realized that life wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic turns. Often it was the small, unexpected encounters, the chance meetings, the fleeting moments of recognition that left the deepest impact. As Emily walked home, she thought about the path that had led her here. College friendships, years of distance, shared memories, and the quiet longings she hadn't fully acknowledged. And now the present had opened a door, giving her a glimpse of possibility, a reminder that connection could return, sometimes when least expected, and sometimes in the most ordinary of places. For Emily, the twist of fate wasn't just about surprise. It was about awakening an emotional recognition of what truly mattered. And in that quiet park with the golden light fading around her, she felt it, the gentle, steady pull of hearts finding their way back to one another, in the purest, most meaningful way. The following evening, Emily found herself back at Rachel's home, helping with dinner once again. The aroma of fresh bread and roasted vegetables filled the air, warm and comforting, but Emily's mind was elsewhere. Her thoughts kept returning to the quiet park, to Liam's words, and to the curious intensity she had seen in his eyes. There was something unspoken there, an honesty that neither of them had fully addressed yet. Rachel moved around the kitchen, humming softly, completely unaware of the storm of emotions quietly building in Emily's chest. She looked at Liam, who was sitting at the kitchen table, sketching in his notebook as he often did. He looked up when Emily entered, his gaze lingering for just a moment longer than necessary. Emily felt that familiar flicker again, the sense that beneath his ordinary teenage demeanor lay a depth of thought and feeling she couldn't quite define. As they settled into the evening, conversation flowed in gentle waves. Rachel shared stories from her workday, Emily talked about a recent project, and Liam occasionally interjected with questions or observations that revealed a thoughtfulness beyond his years. Yet beneath the surface of this everyday interaction, a quiet tension simmered on, unspoken truth hovering between Emily and Liam, neither daring to acknowledge it fully. After dessert, Rachel left the room to take a phone call, leaving Emily and Liam alone for the first time since dinner. The silence that settled between them wasn't uncomfortable, it was deliberate, filled with the weight of things neither had said. Emily took a deep breath, feeling her heart respond to the gravity of the moment. "Liam," she began gently, "about what you said the other night." He looked up, eyes wide, a mixture of curiosity and hesitation in his expression. "I wasn't sure if I should have said it," he admitted quietly. I meant it in a way that I hoped would make sense. I didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable." Emily smiled softly, her chest warming at his honesty. "I know, I understand." "Really? And you don't have to worry, wasn't uncomfortable." "I was surprised, yes, but also touched. You have a kind heart, Liam, and your words showed me that." He looked down at his notebook, running a finger along the edge, as if trying to gather courage. "I don't always know how to say what I feel," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes I just notice things about people, about life, and I wonder what it would be like if things were different. I wasn't trying to, 'cause anything complicated, He trailed off, leaving the rest unsaid. Emily felt the quiet intensity of the moment, the kind of connection that didn't need words. She reached out, placing a hand over his for a brief instant, and felt the steady, reassuring warmth of human presence. "Liam," she said softly, "life has a way of surprising us. Sometimes things go unsaid, and sometimes we feel more than we realize. But the important part is that you care and that you notice. That honesty matters more than anything." He lifted his eyes to hers, and for the first time she saw the vulnerability beneath his composed exterior. There was a longing there, not romantic in the adult sense, but a yearning for understanding, for trust, for connection. Emily felt an echo of her own longing, the loneliness she had carried quietly for months, and in that moment, the parallel between them became clear. They were both navigating feelings they couldn't yet fully express, learning to trust each other's presence without needing to define it. The room felt warmer somehow, though nothing had changed outwardly. It was the weight of unspoken truths settling into understanding. Emily realized that sometimes love and connection were not about dramatic gestures or declarations. They were about small, tender moments like this. A shared glance, a soft word, the courage to admit even a little piece of your heart. Liam finally smiled, a small, genuine expression that made Emily's chest tighten in the most unexpected way. "Thanks, Emily," he said simply, "for listening, for understanding." She returned the smile, feeling a mixture of relief and quiet joy. "Always," she replied, and she meant it. It was a reassurance not just for him but for herself as well. The acknowledgement of feelings, however subtle, however complicated, was a step toward the kind of connection that truly mattered. As the evening drew to a close, Emily left Rachel's house with a sense of quiet fulfillment. Nothing had been fully resolved, nothing had to be but the unspoken truth. Weekend arrived, and Emily found herself at Rachel's home once more. The sky was painted with the soft oranges and purples of sunset, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of early autumn leaves. She had come to help Rachel organize a small family project, sorting old photos and letters that Rachel had been keeping since college. It was a quiet, ordinary task, but Emily sensed that something extraordinary might unfold. Even in this simplicity, Liam sat on the floor, cross-legged, flipping through an old photo album. His expression shifted between curiosity and nostalgia, a quiet intensity in his eyes that Emily had come to notice and quietly admire. She watched him, realizing how much he had grown, not just in years, but in thoughtfulness, empathy, and awareness of the world around him. "Look at this one," Liam said softly, holding up a photograph of him as a small child, perched on Rachel's lap at a family picnic. His gaze lingered on the image, and Emily saw a softness in him, a vulnerability that seemed almost untouched by time. Emily smiled, leaning closer to look. "You've always had that thoughtful look," she said gently. "Even then, it was like you were noticing everything around you, storing it in your heart." Liam met her gaze, and for a moment, the room felt suspended in a kind of stillness. There was so much that had remained unspoken between them, and yet neither needed to rush. Emily felt the quiet pull of anticipation, the sense that a small but powerful revelation was waiting to emerge. Then, without warning, Liam spoke, his voice low but steady. "Emily, there's something I've been meaning to say." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She turned to him fully, giving him her full attention, aware that this was the moment. Their quiet understanding might deepen, the moment where feelings long held in shadow could be brought into the light. I really admire you," Liam said, choosing his words carefully. "Not just because you're smart or kind, but because you see people. You notice things others overlook. You make people feel understood, even when they can't explain themselves. I've felt that from you, and it matters. It's more than I can really explain." Emily felt a lump rise in her throat. It's the honesty in his voice, the courage it took to say what he had only dared to hint at before, moved her deeply. It wasn't romantic in the adult sense, it was something purer, more profound, the unfiltered recognition of value, trust, and emotional connection. I've felt the same, Liam," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Even before dinner, even before tonight. I've always cared about you, not as a child you were, but as the person you are becoming. You notice, you think, you feel deeply. And that, it means a lot to me." For a moment, they sat in silence, the weight of their words settling around them. It was a pause filled with understanding, a shared acknowledgement of something meaningful without needing to define it with labels. Emily realized that sometimes the turning point in life isn't about dramatic declarations, it's about letting the truth be spoken finally, without fear, without expectation, simply for the sake of honesty. Liam closed the photo album gently and looked at her with a quiet smile. "I guess I've been afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that if I said anything, I might be misunderstood, or that it would be too much." But not saying it felt heavier than saying it. Emily reached out, placing a hand over his, a gesture of warmth and reassurance. "It's never too much to be honest about your feelings," she said. "The right people will understand, and even if things are complicated, truth always brings clarity." The moment stretched, not with tension, but with a gentle, emotional fullness. Emily felt a sense of lightness she hadn't experienced in years, quiet joy rooted in connection, in the courage to speak what had been held quietly in the heart. Liam's honesty had not only revealed his own feelings, but had given Emily permission to acknowledge her own, to embrace the depth of care and admiration she had felt all along. They spent the rest of the evening sorting through the old photos, each image sparking memories, laughter, and reflection. Yet beneath the ordinary activity, there was a sense of renewal, a subtle shift in the atmosphere, as if the act of sharing unspoken truths had strengthened their bond in ways neither could fully articulate. As Emily left Rachel's home that night, she walked into the quiet streets with a sense of peace and anticipation. The turning point had come, not in grand gestures or dramatic confessions, but in a simple, heartfelt moment of honesty. She felt lighter, freer, and more connected not just to Liam, but to the possibilities of life itself. Sometimes she realized the moments that change everything are quiet ones. A look, a word, a confession spoken with courage, these were the points at which hearts met, and lives quietly shifted towards something more meaningful. And for Emily, that evening had become a turning point she would carry with her forever. A reminder of the strength, beauty, and power of simply speaking the truth. The following weeks passed quietly, yet they were filled with moments that left lasting impressions on Emily's heart. There was no rush, no drama, only the steady unfolding of connection, understanding, and mutual care. Emily continued visiting Rachel and Liam, often helping with small projects around the house, sharing dinners, or simply sitting together in comfortable silence. Each moment felt intentional, a gentle weaving of trust and familiarity that grew stronger with every meeting. One afternoon, Rachel suggested they take a walk by the lake near their town. The sunlight shimmered across the water, turning ripples into tiny golden sparks. Emily, Rachel, and Liam walked slowly along the path, leaves crunching beneath their feet. There was laughter, easy conversation, and a sense of peace that Emily hadn't realized she had been longing for. The past, the present, and the possibility of the future seemed to converge in those quiet hours. At one point, Liam stopped and looked across the water. Emily noticed the contemplative look on his face, the way he seemed to carry both thoughtfulness and emotion in his gaze. She stood beside him, the soft breeze tugging gently at her hair. "Emily," he said after a moment, his voice calm but sincere, "thank you. Not just for listening the other night, but for being you, for caring, and for noticing. I've learned a lot from you, more than I can put into words." Emily smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun on her face. "And I've learned from you, Liam. You've reminded me how important it is to notice, to feel, and to trust that connections can grow in the simplest ways." They walked on in silence for a few minutes, the kind of comfortable quiet that comes only when hearts are open and unguarded. Emily realized that this was the resolution she had been searching for, a dramatic declaration. It's not an earth-shattering revelation, but a subtle, enduring affirmation of human connection and trust. That evening, as Emily prepared to leave Rachel's home, she felt a quiet sense of completeness. Liam walked her to the door, carrying a small sketch he had been working on during the afternoon, a detailed drawing of the lake path they had just walked. "For you," he said softly. "I thought you might like it." Emily took it, her eyes misting with gentle emotion. "It's beautiful, Liam. Thank you," she said. Touched by both the gesture and the thought behind it, Rachel appeared in the doorway, smiling knowingly. "You two have a special bond," she said warmly. "It's nice to see hearts connecting like this. It's rare and precious." Emily nodded, feeling the truth of her friend's words. She realized that the beauty of life often lay in these quiet, understated moments, the laughter shared across a kitchen table, the honesty spoken in the presence of trust, the care and attention given without expectation. These were the things that left a lasting mark on the heart. Driving home that night, Emily reflected on the journey she had experienced over the past weeks. She thought about the loneliness she had carried before reconnecting with Rachel, about the quiet longing she had felt, and about the subtle, profound impact of Liam's words and presence. Life, she realized, had a way of guiding people toward the connections they needed most, often when they least expected it. For Liam, the experience had been just as meaningful. He had learned the value of speaking truth, of trusting in his own feelings, and of forming bonds built on honesty and empathy. The dinner, the park meeting, the quiet evenings of conversational of it had strengthened his understanding of what it meant to care deeply for someone in a respectful, meaningful way. Weeks later, Emily received a small envelope in the mail. Inside was a note from Liam. "Thank you for being you. Thank you for showing me that hearts can connect even in the quietest ways. I hope we continue to learn from each other, laugh together, and share these moments." Emily smiled, placing the note on her desk. It wasn't a declaration of grand romance or dramatic promises. It was something quieter, purer, and far more lasting. A promise of continued friendship, trust, and emotional connection. The story had reached its natural conclusion, not with fireworks or sweeping gestures, but with a sense of fulfillment that came from understanding, empathy, and the shared human experience. Emily knew that life would continue to bring challenges and changes, but she also knew that the bonds formed through honesty, care, and presence would endure. As she looked out the window that evening, the golden light fading into the soft blues of twilight, Emily felt a gentle peace settle over her. The loneliness that had once weighed so heavily had been replaced by hope, understanding, and a say,